am super excited. I considered running a few times this morning, but then I saw you're all sort of nice. No, you're super nice, so I decided to stay. So thank you all for coming, and thank you all for deciding to come after the coffee break to listen to what I have to say. For those of you who are just beginning with Clojure, I think there are going to be some great tips of how to ease your way into Clojure. And for those of you who already forgot what it's like to be a Clojure beginner, pay attention. Okay? So, yeah, my name is Mey Beisaron. I'm a software engineer. I'm a backend developer at AppsFlyer. And I would like to say thanks to AppsFlyer for sponsoring my travel all the way from Israel to here. And oh yeah, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. Yay. So let's talk about my journey with Clojure. If you would have told me 2.5 months ago that I'm going to be standing here talking in a Clojure conference, I would be laughing to your face. Or maybe not to your face, maybe behind your back, and I would be like, who is this? What is Clojure? But, but because at that time I was engaged with Node.js, a language that I had to learn for my previous job. In fact, every job that I ever got, I had to learn a new language. So when I got the job at AppsFlyer and they said, oh, you have to learn Clojure, and I said, oh, another language, another syntax, right? Wrong. So let's talk about my journey with Clojure. How did it start? Like every Clojure beginner, I started with the Clojure for the Brave and True, amazing book. It was a great introduction into Clojure. And after that, I completed a few questions in the For Clojure website, which was a great way to be familiar with the main functions used in Clojure. And I still didn't feel that I am in the Clojure mindset. And I knew exactly what I had to do. I had to start experimenting with Clojure. And since, like I said, I already learned a few languages, I knew that what I should do is develop a 2D game. So why develop a 2D game? What's in it for me? The first thing is it's a great way to experiment with a new language, already said that. And the second thing is it's a great way to shine in job interviews. Let's talk about how I learned Java. I know you all have a thing with Java, but I'm just going to take a few minutes to talk about it. Okay, so relax. It's not going to last for the entire conversation. So the first ever job interview that I got was in Java, and I didn't know Java. They called on a Friday morning, and they scheduled the interview to Sunday. By the way, in Israel, yes, we work on Sundays. So they scheduled the interview to Sunday, and I had just the weekend to learn Java. Well, not to learn Java, but to learn the fundamentals of Java, to experiment with it a little bit, to learn about object-oriented programming. And I wanted to do something that will impress the interviewers. I wanted them to see that I'm a quick learner, I can handle things. And so that's why I decided to just develop a 2D game. I thought it will be fun. So let's see the first ever 2D game that I developed. So it's the calculus game. What we will see if it will work. Why does it work? Let's see. Okay, it's loading. So what you're going to see, this is a student. It's an infinite runner game. The student tried to avoid exams. And what happens, every exam that he takes will just push him all the way to the back of the screen. And you know what's going to happen next. You failed calculus. And so that's it. That's the game. And so I showed that on a Sunday morning, and guess what? I got the job. So it wasn't only that what made me so happy that I got the job. I also learned a super valuable thing. I learned that by experimenting with developing a 2D game, I was able to understand object-oriented programming for the first time in my life. And even though I never wrote in Java before and I didn't have any, not a lot of knowledge about OOP before, because I was super familiar with 2D games, from my childhood, I knew exactly what I wanted to develop. I mean, I knew what an infinite runner game looks like, so I knew how the outcome should look like, so I knew the questions I should ask, I knew how to divide my task into small tasks along the way. And once you have questions that you answer yourself, you learn way better. So these are the things that I learned over that weekend. And again, it's not that I became an expert, but it gave me a great introduction. I had something to talk about in that interview. And that's all you need in order to start a new language. You need something to get you going. You need something that will make you feel confident in this new language. So, Clojure. Now you know why would you want to develop a 2D game. You know the what's in it for me. And I want to show you my journey of developing a 2D game. And this is the first game that I ever developed in Clojure. Yep, it's not a problem in the presentation. It was just nothing. It was 2 whole weekends of nothing. I didn't even manage to create a single window. 2 weekends. And yes, I knew programming before. But those 2 weekends, they didn't go to waste. Because, like I said, I knew what the outcome should look like. I knew what I'm looking for. So I started asking questions. I started asking questions in Clojure. So now let's see the first real game that I wrote in Clojure. So, what came first? That's the name of the game. Yes, the chicken, and then if we press the egg, yes, again. And that's the game, yay! And I cannot tell you how happy I was when I succeeded developing this game. Oh my God, I felt so proud. I walked around the office, I showed everyone my game. They were all excited. Super, they were like, oh my God, give me more of this game. But no, I think I was as happy, as sad I was, when my 10-year-old neighbor came by and she was like, that's not a game. And that's not fun. And I looked at her and I said, listen, little girl, it's a game, but for grown-ups. That's it. Grown-ups will understand this game. They enjoy it. And I lied. I lied to a 10-year-old. And so that's when I knew, okay, that's not going to work. I'm going to have to develop a 2D game, like a real 2D game in Clojure. So, before I will show you the 2D game and talk a little bit more about that, I would like to stop the Clojure journey for a moment and talk a little bit about the basic 2D game structure. Okay, so I hope you see all the way in the back. Okay, we start with the initialize function. This is where you will initialize the values of the game. If you have to upload to load any images, or you want to set the initial location of the player, or anything you want to initialize in your game, that's going to happen there. And then after that, we have the game loop. So when the game starts, this is the loop that will be going. Once the game ends, that means that this loop ended. So inside this loop, we have the input function. This is where we handle all the input from the player. If keys were pressed or whatever, like sliding, any input that you want to handle from the player. And after that, we have the update function. So once we got the input, we want to update the values of the game. Maybe like collisions with exams or whatever other cool game that you have. You want to update the values. And after you updated those values, you want to redraw the entire screen with those new values that you inserted in the update function. So now that you are familiar with the general 2D game structure, we can go back to Clojure. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the main steps that I took Let me remind you that we saw all together the fun chicken game, which was the first game that I wrote. Later on, I experimented a little bit with another game that I developed with a tutorial. And then there is a final game that is a great surprise for you all, and I will leave it to the end. Okay, so when I started to learn Clojure, I noticed that unlike any other language, my journey was separate. Okay, so I had to separate the reading from the writing skills. I truly felt that I had to develop my reading skills in a different way than I developed my writing skills. I hope it makes sense, but I'm sure you will understand it better later. So this is why I have the Clojure Progress tracker for you. Okay, down here in the x-axis, we have the steps that I'm going to talk about, and knowledge level. And so reading and writing in Clojure. Writing is going to be pink, and reading is going to be green. Okay. So the first step for me was to start with something familiar in order to ease my way in. Like I said, it's a great stepping stone into a new language. And for me, my stepping stone was that chicken game that I showed you. So that chicken game was just my way of trying to translate Java code into Clojure because I was familiar with Java. So like you see, the pink line is because it helped me to strengthen my writing skills in Clojure because I did this on my own. So this is a Java code of creating a simple window. We have the frame object and the button object. I'm using the JFrame and JButton. And then we have to add an action listener. And inside the action listener, we decide what action will be performed, what will happen when we press the button. So if we press the button, we will open a message dialog which just says OK. So this is the code in Java. If we'll see the same code that I just translated into Clojure, again, I just used the JFrame and JButton. I created a frame and a button. And then, again, add action listener, and there you have it, the show message dialog function once again. So this is like not really Clojure. I mean, it's just Java written in Clojure. So it did not get me what I wanted. Yeah, I wanted to learn the Clojure set of mind, and it did not get me there. But it was a great stepping stone. That was what it's all about, right? Like ease your way in. So my next step was read someone else's code. So I have to stop here and say something super important, and it's especially for those of you who forgot what it's like to be a Clojure beginner. Not any code that you will show somebody who never saw Clojure before will be something that will help us learn. Oh, look at that code. Huh? Do you understand? Oh my God. What is that? What's with all the parentheses? What are you talking about? And if it's a huge, complex system, there is even less a chance, even though I have, experience in programming. I have experience with programming languages. I understand microservices, but when I looked at like a gigantic piece of code, I don't know what's going on there, and I was just overwhelmed, and I wanted to run away, get more coffee, do something else. I don't want to look at this code. So what helped me, and I truly believe it could help other people if they want to learn Clojure, is to look at a simple 2D game code. Again, why? Because we all know what to expect. We will look for the input functions. We will look for the game loop. So if you know what you're looking for, even though it's unfamiliar syntax, it helps you. So if you have somebody like around you that is not that familiar or doesn't even know anything about Clojure, don't start with showing them like a huge, big thing in Clojure. And sometimes the for Clojure questions, they are too simple because you don't get to see a real program going. So a 2D game, simple, like tiny, small code, it helps. That's all you need. And then you get enough confidence to move forward. So this is why it helped me a lot when I did this. So this guy, yeah, great library. Zach Oakes, he has a wonderful tutorial that talks about the PlayCLJ library. And it actually gives you, this library actually gives you a uniform API to write 2D games. So it wraps Java code for you, and then now you're able to use this library in order to write 2D games in a pure Clojure way. This guy, James Trunk, I followed his tutorial, but instead of a cow and apples, I still had the the poor student. Just that this time he is not avoiding exam. This time he's going to collect fails. So, I mean, yeah. Let's see. So this is the game that I developed using the PlayCLJ. It's just a poor student going collecting fails. And that was the second game that I managed to write using those two tutorials and a little bit more things that I read here and there. But this was the first time that I actually managed to start wrapping my imperative mind around the Clojure mindset, functional mindset. So it was a great experience. And again, I wasn't looking at a big complex code. It was super simple. You saw it's not, I can't even call it a game, but it made me feel good, so I don't care. Okay. So I read someone else's code. How do I know that I understand what I saw there? I'm gonna try to change it. If I broke the code, I did not understand. If it runs, yay, another win for me. So after I read a simple code. I wanted to see if I can change it, create something on my own. I started with just changing, the images, the UI, the different things, or just making small changes. It made me realize what I understand in Clojure and what parts are missing. And when somebody at work was like super nice and they said, oh, well, if you have any questions, come ask. And I said, okay, what is Clojure? Or how do I learn that? But that gave me the opportunity to have real questions about something simple and not ask them, what do I see? I had specific small questions about a small amount of code. So that was a way for me to learn gradually Clojure. Okay, so the next thing that I'm going to talk about that helped me is when I wanted to start, I'm going to talk about this game that we all just saw, and I'm going to give you a specific example as to what exactly I learned from that game. So we have the game, we have entities, we have the fail bricks that were scattered along the screen, and then we have the player. So this is when I learned, so this creates actually a fail brick. And this, after I knew that if I want to create like a fail brick in Java, I will create an entire class, I have this whole bunch of code for it. But here, I truly understood how I can create an entity with just a map. And why would I want to use a source, or how I would use that. So that's a great example. Also, again, if I want to create the player, I don't need bazillion lines of code of like classes. I just need a source once again. So, okay, that was a major stepping stone for me. What's with the arrows? Okay, I know for all of you, it's like, oh yeah, we know that. Well, we've been writing with those arrows for years. What? So for me, when I tried to, handle the entities of the game, and I understood that I can just transfer data inside functions. This is when I truly understood how to do that, because it made sense to me. I have the player, I have the fail objects. If if the player moved, I would like to go over all of the entities at once using the map function. And then the result that I will get, I wanted to go into the remove collect object. Let's go inside and I want to elaborate a little bit more about that. So I have all of the entities. I send them to the map function. Oops. I send them over to the map function, and inside there, I want to both update the player position, and then if there was a collision, I want that the list of fail objects, I want to know which object of the fail was hit or not. And then this result I can send to the remove, because now I know which objects I want to remove from my list or which ones not. And I cannot tell you how many times I went back to this stupid small amount of code when I had real things that I had to do at work. Okay, that's also real, but you know what I mean. When I had more complicated tasks, I had my simple example right there for me, and I was like, oh yeah, I know what it does. Okay, I know that one. So this has great value, you guys. Really, don't underestimate simple code, even for experienced programmer, even for somebody who learned a few more languages in their life. It's not that simple to go into Clojure, but it's not that bad. I mean, I actually like it right now. So let's see one more example from this specific game, the one with the fail objects. Okay, so over here, what you have is the main screen function. Inside, this is where you get to see what I meant when I said that PlayCLJ gives you a uniform API to write 2D games. So what you see, what we're going to talk about is the onRender function and then the onKeyDown. Okay, so the onRender function, they both get, so all of the functions that we saw before, they all get the same input. They get the screen and the entities. And even though over here you can see that the onKeyDown doesn't use the screen really, but still it's a part of the uniform API. And then this was another point where I understood how you just pass along the data and you don't have objects activating functions. You just have functions activating or functions. So this was another great way for me to understand Clojure a little bit better. So I highly recommend PlayCLJ. Okay, the moment you've all been waiting for. The parenthesis snake. Okay, so this is the game that I wrote after doing all of this process that I talked about. And this was like the almost like the end of my process, but the process never ends, and I'm still learning, and I still have plans for more games that I want to write, but that's just for fun. But writing this game really helped me to understand what's missing in my knowledge, what I have, what I don't have, and to see a bit more complicated and a real fun game. And so what is the parenthesis snake? I don't know if you can all see, but that's parentheses scattered around the screen. And the snake, he moves around the screen, and he wants to collect the parentheses. And over here in this corner, it's the balanced parentheses that he already collected. So, if you collect your parentheses in a balanced way, you succeed. But if you don't, okay, let's see what happens. So right now I'm going to still collect another one. Ha ha ha. Go eat something because comfort food. And I'm a vegetarian, but I only had this gift, so so I'm sorry to all the chickens. I did not mean go eat something, go eat chickens. That came out wrong, but you got the idea. Okay, I see that. Okay, so I see by the time that I'm a little bit. I'm okay. All right. So I want to conclude. I have a few more things that I want to have to say. That I want to say. Let's talk again about why developing a 2D game is good for you if you don't get it so far. I said that developing a 2D game, it helps you learn how to handle UI. It helps you to learn how to think in the language mindset. But the main thing is that you truly are able to set your own small goals and then to follow your own goals. And this was the main difference between just trying to complete questions or reading a book, which is, everything is great, but if you have your own questions, then, I think you gain knowledge much better. And since a 2D game actually involves in having, threads and handling data structures, it also contains everything that you need to learn about a new language. So it's not like completely different from what you'll have to do in your day-to-day job, right? But it's not as complicated as what you'll have to do there. So that's just the middle, and it's fun. So what was the process? The process was, I said start with something familiar. So for me, Java was familiar enough, but I believe that if there is a specific 2D game that you like, or a specific 2D game that you played before, and you know very well, try to look for an example code of this game, and then either try to read it to, try to develop it yourself, and you'll see that you're either fail or just manage to do it right away, but something will happen. Those questions that I said that you're going to ask yourself, that's magic right there. And then reading someone else's code, like I said, you still get to see the right way to write in this language, but it's not as complicated as looking at a big system. And then changing someone else's code, this is how you know if you really understood what you just read. And the last thing is just write your own game. Maybe it's a great Snake game. Maybe it's a great Pac-Man game. But it's going to be something, and it's going to be great because games are wonderful. And dream big. But I hope you all got the thing of it. Start with tiny steps, because small goals means small wins, and small wins, it gives you happy moments scattered along the way. And I think that's it. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you. That was amazing. So, any questions from the audience? Yes. Here. So, is it a Star Wars question?
It shouldn't be.
No, I'm also a Star Wars expert, so I don't need to ask questions. But, no, no, seriously. Would you say there are, either in the semantics of the language or in the ecosystem, differences in Clojure from other languages that make it harder for beginners? And if so, what are the content or maybe the tutoring programs, or I don't know, that could make it easier compared to other languages?
So I think that what was that difficult or different in Clojure was that you have everything different. You have the syntax, is for starters. When I read other languages, even though it was a new language, it didn't really matter if if it's Java, if it was C, or if it was Node.js. I mean, they had some similarities, some differences, but they all kind of roughly had a few things that are common that made me, feel confident enough to try and experiment. But when I got to Clojure, I felt like I didn't even know how to start. I didn't even know how to, write the first thing. And that was the main problem for me. And about tutorials, I mean, there are good tutorials out there, but because it's very personal, I don't know how other people feel. But because I felt that I didn't even know what I'm looking for, it was like a big party of everything new. What do I even want to do? What is life? And So once I had those small goals, that's what truly helped me. And not just, looking at a tutorial, somebody telling me how to write code, because I know how to write code. I wanted to be able to do something. So I hope I answered your question.
Any other questions? Yes.
Thanks, great talk. I was wondering, I'm trying to teach Clojure to beginners in programming in general, and I cannot relate to that, and probably you also not, because I come in a similar background as you. I was first doing Java. Do you have an intuition how it is for somebody that never coded to code in Clojure for the first time? Did you think about it? Or?
Yeah, actually I did. So I think that so there are two options. Either it won't matter that it's Clojure. I mean, I did teach students, like high school students, programming for their first time, and it was C. So it was, I have to convince them that, the console is nice enough and that they can do good things with it. And, but it doesn't matter. Starting to program, it's always kind of difficult. But if you just tell them that this is the way it is, maybe you'll convince them. But on a more serious note, I think that if you start with something simple, like just give them a game and start changing values in that game, then they see the figure jumping up and down or moving, and then they can relate more into what's going on in there. And yeah, I don't think it will matter that much. Starting to program it's okay. It's not that difficult. It's okay.
Any other questions? Okay. Here's your stroop waffles.
Yay, I love those.
Thanks a lot for the talk.
Thank you guys for having me.
Clojure conference. Right?
Yeah, oh my God.
That's amazing. Thank you. Big round of applause.
Thank you.